Welcome back. Today we tell the story of one of the most feared submarine hunters of the Second World War, a warship whose very presence kept the Imperial Japanese Navy on edge. This is the story of the American destroyer escort USS England, D-635, a ship that became a nightmare for Japanese submariners and earned a place in naval history as one of the greatest sub-hunters ever built. Commissioned in 1943, USS England was not a battleship, not a carrier, not even a cruiser. She was small, fast, and lightly armored, designed to screen convoys and protect larger ships from the silent killers of the deep. But in the spring of 1944, she turned into a legend. In just 12 days in May, USS England sank 6 Japanese submarines, an achievement no other Allied ship could match during the entire war. Her success was not luck. It was the result of well-drilled crews, advanced sonar, and a new weapon, the Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar, which hurled dozens of contact-fused bombs ahead of the ship. Unlike depth charges, which exploded at set depths, Hedgehogs only detonated on impact, meaning the crew instantly knew if they had scored a hit. Time after time, USS England's sonar picked up a contact, her commander maneuvered for the perfect attack, and her Hedgehogs found their mark. The Japanese were stunned. Submarines sent to intercept American forces in the Pacific were hunted down and destroyed one by one. Crews began to speak in whispers of a cursed ship, a relentless hunter that always found its prey. Japanese commanders even altered their submarine operations, fearful that any mission might end with their crews vanishing beneath the waves. By the end of the war, USS England had earned a Presidential Unit Citation and the eternal respect of sailors across the U.S. Navy. Admirals declared that if her deeds could be duplicated across the fleet, the war might have ended even sooner. This was the hunter that turned the hunters into hunted. A small destroyer escort that proved courage, skill, and determination could bring down giants. The USS England became the terror of the Pacific's silent war, a submarine hunter whose record has never been surpassed. The hunt began on May 18, 1944. USS England was patrolling near the Solomon Islands when her sonar operators picked up the first contact. It was the Japanese submarine I-16, stalking the American fleet. Commander C.A. Smith gave the order to attack. Hedgehogs fired in a ripple, dozens of bombs arcing into the sea. Moments later, deep beneath the waves, violent explosions rolled up to the surface. Oil and debris marked the end of I-16. Barely 2 days later, England's sonar struck again, this time the submarine RO-106. The crew moved with cold precision, lining up another Hedgehog run. The sea boiled as the contact was destroyed, and yet another Japanese submarine was erased from the war. The crew was gaining confidence. They were no longer just escorts, they were hunters. On May 22nd, she found RO-104. This one fought hard, maneuvering deep and evading initial attacks. But the persistence of England was relentless. Run after run, she dropped Hedgehog salvos until finally a massive explosion erupted below. Sonar went silent. RO-104 was gone. The very next day, May 23rd, another submarine, RO-116, was caught in the trap. Once again, the Hedgehog spoke. Once again, the Japanese submarine never resurfaced. 4 kills in 6 days, an astonishing feat. Still the hunt continued. On May 24th, RO-108 tried to slip through the screen. She too was found and destroyed, the 5th victim in less than a week. By now the crew of England was operating like a machine. Every man knew his role, and every attack ended with the same grim result: another submarine destroyed. Finally, on May 31st, they closed in on RO-105. This was the toughest battle of them all. The submarine maneuvered desperately, trying to break free, diving deep, and clinging to survival. For hours the chase raged, with England and her sister ships pounding the waters. At last, England's Hedgehogs found their mark. A thunderous explosion followed by wreckage confirmed the kill. In just 12 days, USS England had sent 6 Japanese submarines to the bottom, a record no other Allied ship would equal. What made it more extraordinary was that each kill was achieved with the same weapon, the Hedgehog mortar, wielded with uncanny accuracy. By the end of the war, her record stood untouchable. Japanese submarine operations were thrown into chaos, commanders forced to retreat or scatter, always fearing the hunter that prowled the Pacific. USS England proved that even a small escort could change the course of a campaign when armed with determination, skill, and the right weapons. When the Pacific War finally drew to a close, the story of USS England had already passed into legend. She had been built to protect convoys, yet her name was known far beyond the escort fleet. To Japanese submariners, she was the shadow in the water, the destroyer escort that struck without mercy, a ship whose sonar could not be escaped and whose hedgehogs always found their mark. To Allied sailors, she became a symbol of what determination and teamwork could achieve, proof that even a small ship, if handled with skill and courage, could turn the tide of war. After May 1944, Japan's submarine command reeled in shock. Losing 6 submarines in less than 2 weeks was catastrophic, and it forced them to scale back operations at a time when the Empire desperately needed every vessel at sea. American admirals later declared that USS England had done more in those 12 days than many entire squadrons achieved over years of fighting. Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, summed it up best. "There will always be an England in the United States Navy. But victory carries a strange fate." After the war, the mighty battleships and aircraft carriers were preserved as symbols of power. Smaller ships like England were not spared the scrapyard. She was decommissioned in 1945 and eventually broken up, her steel recycled and her hull erased from the seas she once ruled. Yet her legacy remained untouchable. Every naval academy taught her story. Every submarine hunter studied her tactics. And every sailor who ever feared the silent menace of the deep knew that one destroyer escort had shown the world that submarines could be hunted down, one by one, until none remained. The USS England never fired her guns in a surface battle, never traded blows with enemy fleets. Her war was silent, her victories unseen beneath the waves. But those victories saved countless convoys, shielded carriers, and crippled Japan's ability to fight beneath the sea. Her record, 6 submarines in 12 days, stands unmatched to this day. She was the hunter that terrified the hunters, the warship that held Japan's submarines in fear, and the proof that sometimes the smallest ship can leave the largest legacy. By the time her streak ended in June 1944, USS England had changed the rules of anti-submarine warfare. She had shown that a small ship, with a well-trained crew and the right equipment, could dominate an ocean battlefield where once only fear and uncertainty reigned. Her sonar operators became as important as gunners, theirs the first line of attack, guiding the ship through the unseen war beneath the waves. The Japanese never recovered from the blow. Their submarines, already stretched thin, were forced to avoid areas where England and her escorts patrolled. Missions that might have disrupted U.S. carrier task forces or endangered critical supply convoys were abandoned. In a war decided by logistics, fuel, ammunition, and men flowing across the Pacific, this was a silent but decisive victory. But the story of England is also a reminder of sacrifice. Each attack demanded nerves of steel. A single mistake could have meant a torpedo slamming into her hull, sending her crew to the bottom as so many others before them. Yet she pressed on, day after day, until her name became synonymous with submarine hunting itself. After the war, sailors who had served on England spoke of her not as a mere escort, but as a living thing, a hunter that seemed to sense her prey and strike without hesitation. Naval historians later called her record the most successful single-ship anti-submarine campaign in history. No destroyer escort before or since has matched her tally. Her hull may have been scrapped, her decks silent, but her legend endured. In classrooms, in training manuals, and in the memories of veterans, USS England remains a story of precision, courage, and relentless pursuit. She was the destroyer escort that struck fear into Japan's submarine force and proved that in the vast Pacific, even the hunters could be hunted. And so the legend of USS England grew, not through massive guns or grand battles with enemy fleets, but through relentless precision and the cold, unseen war beneath the waves. She hunted the silent killers of the sea with such skill that the Japanese Navy was forced to change its entire strategy. Admirals who once believed submarines were unstoppable weapons now spoke of one small American ship that had turned the tide. Her victories were not just numbers on a chart. Each submarine destroyed meant convoys saved, aircraft carriers shielded, and countless lives preserved. In a war where supply lines were lifelines, England became the invisible shield that kept the Pacific campaign moving forward. She was proof that the greatest impact could come from the smallest hull, guided by men who refused to miss their mark. When she finally left the war behind, her name was etched in naval history. Sailors whispered about her record as if it were myth, a story too extraordinary to be true. Yet it was real, 6 submarines in 12 days, unmatched to this very day. Admirals declared that if her feat could be repeated across the fleet, the war might have ended even sooner. Though scrapped after the war, USS England never truly disappeared. Her story is still told in naval academies, her lessons still studied by those who guard the seas. For her crew, she was more than steel and rivets. She was a living hunter, carrying them through storms, through fire, and into legend. USS England remains the destroyer escort that terrified Japan's undersea fleet, the hunter that turned the hunters into prey, and the reminder that in war, determination and courage can make even the smallest ship unstoppable. The Navy never forgot the record USS England set. Long after the war ended, her story was retold as the perfect example of teamwork and discipline at sea. In 1963, when a new guided missile cruiser was commissioned, the Navy gave her the same name, USS England, CG-22. It was more than tradition. It was an honor meant to carry forward the reputation of the original submarine hunter. Sailors serving on the new ship often spoke with pride that their namesake had been the most successful sub-killer of the war. For historians, the significance of England's patrol in May 1944 lies in its timing. At that stage of the Pacific campaign, every Japanese submarine destroyed meant fewer threats to the massive armadas gathering for the invasions of Saipan, Guam, and later the Philippines. Each victory by England helped clear the path for the island-hopping campaign that would eventually carry Allied forces to Japan's doorstep. But perhaps the most striking part of her story is how ordinary she appeared. USS England was not glamorous. She was not built for glory. She had no huge armor belts, no massive main guns, and no towering flight decks. She was a compact ship, built in numbers, intended to guard convoys quietly. Yet through her record, she outshone many capital ships and earned the undying respect of the fleet. Her crew, too, were not veterans at the start. They were young, most fighting their first major battles, yet their performance was flawless. They proved that training, discipline, and resolve could transform ordinary men into extraordinary warriors. Together, they and their ship entered history side by side. USS England stands today as one of the clearest reminders of World War II's lesson: size alone does not determine greatness. It is courage, readiness, and relentless determination that decide victory. She will forever be remembered as the ship that made submarines fear the surface, the destroyer escort that turned an ocean into a hunting ground. And so the story of USS England comes to its end, not in defeat, but in immortality. In just 12 days, she accomplished what no other ship in history has ever repeated: 6 enemy submarines destroyed. Each one hunted down with patience, precision, and unshakable determination. She was not the biggest ship, nor the most famous, but she proved that skill and courage could turn a humble escort into a legend of the seas. Though her hull is gone, her name endures. The men who served aboard her carried the pride of knowing they had achieved the impossible, and the Navy itself honored her by ensuring that there would always be an England. Today, her story lives on as a symbol of how ordinary sailors, working together with unbreakable will, can change the course of a war. USS England was the hunter that terrified Japan's submarine force, the ship that showed the world no enemy was safe beneath the waves, and the reminder that sometimes legends are born not from size or power, but from relentless pursuit of victory. She will forever remain the submarine hunter that could not be matched.